So how to stay calm in the middle of a crisis, how to deal with everyday stress, or how to improve your health despite aging and other stressors of life. Well, I found an answer to all these questions in yoga. Hello, my name is Bibi and I am a certified Iyengar Yoga teacher. And today I'm speaking on behalf of the Iyengar Yoga Association of Vancouver. I hope you will feel inspired to start or continue yoga practice by meeting and learning from our teachers. We are starting this series of interviews and invite you for a dialogue. So please write your questions in the comments below and we will be happy to answer them next time that we meet here. Today, I have invited Shirley Daventry French. Shirley is a direct student of B.K.S. Iyengar, who has practiced and studied yoga in the tradition of Patanjali for 50 years. Her first intensive with Mr. Iyengar in Pune was back in 1979. Shirley had the chance to edit some of Guruji's writing, which afforded her many opportunities to question, listen, and learn from him in afternoons in the library of the Institute. In 1978, a small group of Iyengar teachers, yoga teachers, formed the Victoria Yoga Center, which a few years later, with Guruji's blessing, changed its name to the Iyengar Yoga Center of Victoria. Hello, Shirley.
Hello.
Thank you for being on this call. During so many years, you have seen so many different people on the yoga mat, I could imagine. Let's start from this question. So why people come first time to see you in the yoga studio? Like what kind of problems they try to solve?
Well, a variety of problems, of course. I mean, more I think people come because they're looking for something in their life that's missing in their life. I don't think so many people come now for physical reasons as used to. It used to be, a knee or a shoulder or a backache or something like that. But I think that there is an awareness now that yoga offers a little bit more than that. So I think it could be any kind of problem, and it often is a physical challenge. My husband started because he hurt his back, so I didn't. I started because I'd come to Canada, and with a young woman with my husband who is a physician, and had 3 babies very in here, and one day woke up and thought, what the hell am I doing here? So it was I just had heard about yoga, and I decided to go and. Oh, I know. I was teaching swimming at the Y. I joined the Y for exercise. I've always been fit, physically fit. So I joined the Y, and I was swimming. And after swimming, I was having a shower one day. And in the shower, I met a woman. And she was also fairly new to Victoria, from New York. And she was taking a yoga class. So and every week I would, after this particular session, I would meet her in the showers and we'd talk. And I liked the sound of her class, her yoga class. And I just needed a break from family and things. And so one day I went along and thought, I'll see what this is all about. And physically, it wasn't particularly challenging for me, but psychologically it was, the slowing down, the listening, trying not to achieve things, not trying to win a race or something like that, but just being there. And I felt better after the class. So I took another class. Yeah. So, and that was it. And I found, I didn't know anything really about the philosophy then. But the teacher I had, she was also English. She did give us little talks about yoga philosophy. So I was intrigued. And she also mentioned Guruji's book as one of the best yoga books on the market. This was 1960, so 1970, I guess, yes. So I got his book and I looked at the photographs and thought, oh my God. So, but I actually read more of his book in the beginning than doing the postures from it. But then, gradually, as I did more, and Swami Radha, whom I mentioned in my piece I sent you, she came to Victoria to give a series of talks on yoga. And my teacher at the Y recommended that the students go and listen to this. So I did. And there were 6 talks, and they were morning and afternoon, so for 3 days. So I registered for one. I thought I'd just go and see what it's like. And then I went back for a second, and I ended up going to all 6 of them. And I thought to myself, I've never heard so much common sense in my life. So I wanted to know more about that aspect of it too. And that took me to her ashram. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I hear from you, that first the curiosity brought you to a yoga studio, and it was not a Iyengar yoga studio, just a yoga practice.
It wasn't Iyengar then. No. It was the Y was running a class, and in the beginning they had to call it. I think it was called psychophysical exercise, because the Y was a Christian association, and they were suspicious of yoga.
Oh, I see.
So they said, we don't want you converting people into heathens. So, yeah. So they had one class, and it was very popular. And because this was in the 60s, there was the Vietnam War protests going on. There was a lot of ferment in the world, in North America, and protests and dropping out. People were dropping out of university and school, and dropping out of marriages, and doing. So there was a lot of questioning and a lot of ferment. So people started to look at the East, the Asia. I won't call it the East anymore. They started looking at Asian countries and India particularly, and how they lived. And so it opened a whole new area. I hadn't been particularly interested in India before. But and I found that the postures, doing the postures, I felt good. I felt good afterwards.
I think that we all have this kind of experience, people who found for themselves being dedicated to the yoga practice. I cannot imagine myself starting morning without yoga practice. It's already now my body is asking, like demanding me, like, to practice yoga. And so something that also I heard from what you mentioned, that yes, in the beginning maybe some people do come with some physical needs, like, oh, I'm stiff, I need to do some stretching, and this is maybe the first approach. But then with the time they understand that after yoga practice and after having this 90 minutes class, they feel different, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's something else that's going on. So if you could,
Well, I had 3 children, and they were all quite, they were born in 5 years, so it was fairly quick. And my husband was in a family doctor, so he was in a busy practice. And in those days, he answered the phone at home, and the family all answered the phone. I trained my children to say Dr. French's residence when they picked up the phone, and we took messages. So we were busy. It was a busy household. And the children are busy anyway. And I just needed something for myself, because I was blaming it all on Canada. If I hadn't come to Canada, this wouldn't all have happened. And one night we had a dinner party. We had a visiting doctor from Iran who came to dinner with his wife. And at the dinner party, I listened to the conversation. You know, I suddenly heard myself speaking as if I was outside of myself. And I didn't like what I was hearing. I didn't like this woman that I was listening to, and it was me. So I thought, I better do something about this. So that was all part of the ferment of the time for me.
Mm-hmm.
Just questioning things, you know, why am I in Canada and why am I here? You know, and there has to be more to life than this.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all in the some kind, sooner or later, hopefully we do ask these kind of, existential questions of meaning of our lives.
Yeah.
And myself, I find myself that I sometimes, I have another extreme that is overthinking. And how yoga helps me is I'm really experiencing that what you mentioned earlier about being mindful in action. It's not that you are thinking that you are being present, but when you are busy with your body, you are being mindful in the present moment. There's no any other chance because your mind is busy with what's going on now in the present
Yeah.
moment with the body, right?
Well, even now, I mean, now it's many years later, you know, and I'm in my later 80s now. So um, I, the way I describe it now is that like you, I have tea in the morning. I have a cup of tea, still English enough to have a cup of tea in the morning.
Mhm.
And then I drink it, and then I go down to my yoga room. I have a yoga room in my house, which is quite big. I used to teach there sometimes. And so I go down there and do my practice. And I'm a different person when I finish. And sometimes I do a pranayama practice
Mhm.
and then have a break and then do an asana practice. Sometimes I combine the two. I have just one practice because my husband's not too well at the moment.
Mhm.
And so I have to work around that. But I'm a different person when I come out of my yoga room from the one who goes in. Really, it's quite markedly different. You could ask my daughter that she'd vouch for that.
How would you describe that difference? So
Well,
like,
I wake up and I see all the difficulties in life, all the problems. And I have a beautiful view from my bedroom. I have a bedroom with an ocean, almost panoramic ocean view,
wow.
mountains in the States. And so it's very uplifting view. But I look out of that and I think, oh my God, I've got all these things to do. You know, I've got, and I never get time for this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like hypnotizing myself. But in a way, I don't want to do it. So I try not to talk because I've usually bought my husband a cup of tea too, you know, and he's sitting there drinking it. I try not to talk at all because I I don't like what I find myself saying at that point. So I try to be silent. I drink my tea and I go downstairs and practice. And when I come up, the problems are all there. Everything is there, but my perspective has changed. I'm different. So, and it doesn't make me, again, it doesn't make me an easy, sunny person all the time. That's not my nature. It's a very more active nature. And if you lived in London, you know a little bit about that. Londoners talk a lot and argue a lot. And, yes.
Yes,
So,
I agree.
so that aspect's there. But as I say, I can get on with things then. The rest of the day unfolds not without any difficulty, but with much less difficulty.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, I hear you. I think I am B.K.S. Iyengar's quote came to my mind. He said something about that yoga changes you. Like we all say, oh, we want to change something on outside,
Yeah,
right? Happy with this, we're not happy with that. We want to change things, but why don't we start from changing ourselves by changing
absolutely.
the perspective, right? The perspective, like how we see things,
Yeah.
how we think about things or challenges in our lives, or That's, yeah. Did you have, so my question is about, my second question would be about commitment, because I find that there are lots of, like, especially nowadays, my friends, maybe they would come to a yoga studio and they will practice for the, they will buy a subscription for some maybe what, 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, but about being consistent. So did you experience this, the benefits of a different state of being, and not being just like achiever, but really experiencing this mindfulness in your body right from the first time, or it?
Oh, I did,
Okay.
because I was, as I mentioned, I was fit. I wasn't, so I wasn't over fitness, and I was athletic. I had done a lot of athletics, and I was at the time skiing and swimming and running and doing all of those things. So I was, but I, I, one of the things I felt different was I realized that my upper body is tight, my lower body is very flexible. I didn't know that again until I started yoga. But so and I had to look at opening my chest, and because when if you feel everything's too much around you, you start to close your chest, to collapse your chest. And so that was a revelation to me, how stiff my upper spine was. Yeah.
Yeah, especially nowadays when, I even if I don't want to, I realize how much time I spend in front of the computer, right? And like,
Yes. Yeah, well, I write a lot, and that's the thing. I do a lot of writing, and so I am on the computer a lot. And not then, because I didn't have a computer at that time, but
writing, right? And on desks,
yeah,
and
writing, reading. Yes, yeah.
sitting on a chair and reading. I really wanted eager to ask your experience of going to Pune and studying with B.K.S. Iyengar directly, because I don't have this opportunity anymore now, and I would like
Well,
to hear more about it. How was it changing for you at your first trip to India? It's very different, right, from London. I've been in India.
yes, yeah, very different. And Victoria, where I live, I live outside of Victoria a little bit, and so it's very different. And I, we were I went with my husband the first time. The two of us went together, and when we arrived at Mumbai, which was called Bombay then, we got off the plane, and the international airport had burned down a few days before. So we had to come into the domestic airport, and it was absolute chaos, absolute chaos. And we were tired because it's a long journey. So my husband fortunately saw a sign about taxis telling us how much we should pay for a taxi, because it wasn't at all organized. Now, if you go to Pune, taxis are all more organized. But there it was not. You just had to find one, shout for one, and because they're all trying to get you to be in their car. So we got in a taxi, but we went through the airport, the two of us, and I thought it's either I lived before in the time of the Raj or something, because I felt, myself just not being bothered by all this chaos. But we'd also lived in North Africa for 2 years. So I was used to a culture that was very different, and that wasn't such a shock to me. So I think, I navigate, or we navigated that quite well, and we got into the Mumbai and to our hotel, and the taxi driver, of course, tried to charge us about 5 times as much as the price, and my husband wouldn't give it to him. So we had a big fuss in the lobby of the hotel, and the hotel threw him out in the end. We gave him what he was supposed to get, and that was that. So that was the first night, and middle of the night, of course. Then the following day, we were going to catch a train to Pune, and we went we got a taxi and to go to the airport. And I turned the windows down because it was so hot, compared to Victoria. It was November, and a woman, a beggar, put a baby through the window into my lap. And I mean, I thought for a minute she was giving me the baby, but she was certainly giving me the baby to tell me she needed money, you know. So I quickly threw the baby back out the window to her and closed my window. That was the taxi ride. And then when we got to the railway station, and it's huge, it's a huge Gothic building that the British was built when the British were there. And there's people everywhere. We couldn't find anywhere to buy a ticket to Pune. So finally I found somebody who understood English, who directed me to a place where there was a lineup for train tickets to Pune. And we got in the line, and we were about 50th person in the line, I think, at that time. And they closed the window up and went to lunch. So we didn't know whether to stand there or to go away, but most people went away again. So we left it, we went away and did something. And then we came back and lined up again, and eventually got our ticket, you know. So, and that was for the following day, I believe, and went by train to Pune. So Pune wasn't so crowded after Mumbai, of course, Bombay. And so we were able to deal with it. It wasn't that it wasn't intrusive, and it's certainly very, very different from Victoria, but we were used to navigating something like this because of North Africa, yeah, where there were more camels on the road than cars. Yes.
Yes, yeah, I was in Mumbai. It's recently, like maybe a few years ago. It is a very crowded place.
Right.
You're not used. It is like I had a feeling that it's totally different world. Like I even felt that I landed on
It's a different world. Yes. No. When classes started, we, after the first class again, we met a couple from South Africa, and she's a teacher in the States now, Felicity Green, and we met them and started chatting. So we went out to breakfast with them after class, and we all sat there. We just went, oh, yeah, what was this? It was like a whirlwind. Yeah, and I thought that it helped me navigate the classes a little bit better because I'd been to school in England. I was used to that sort of shouting and discipline, you know, not the way teachers have to talk to people now. But and we came out and had breakfast with these Felicity and David and talked about it, and we laughed about some of the things Guruji said. He was talking about the skin moving. I'd never heard that before. My husband's a doctor, and he never thought about that before either, the skin moving. And he would show us on people. So he'd tell us, come here, BB. And then he'd say, put out your arm. So they'd put out their arm, and then he'd get you to, if you had long sleeves, you'd have to pull it up. Yeah. And he'd show you the skin, and he'd say, look here. So we'd all look at the arm. And then he'd give her or him some instructions. Mm-hmm. And then he would say, mm-hmm, good, or just nod his head. And everybody around would go, as if they'd seen something remarkable. But the four of us, when we were at breakfast, we sat around a table and we said, skin doesn't move. and David Hall, who he was a computer person, but he studied the body quite a lot because he was a rolfer also. He said that Guruji shouldn't be allowed to use anatomy because anatomy was crazy, you know. So we were dismissive, but we weren't dismissive of, we were lively and we could feel the energy in us. And So we did something that Swami Radha used to talk about, at least I did, suspend judgment. And of course went back and every day for 3 weeks, for a 3-week intensive. And by the end, as I told you in my bio, I couldn't wait to get out of India. We went to Hong Kong on the way back. We went via Hong Kong that time, and Hong Kong seems so clean, you know. And we all had salad for dinner because we said we could have something now that crunches, a vegetable that crunches instead of, you know, Indian food, although I like Indian food.
Mm.
So I went home and I was already teaching it and couldn't wait to go back. Started the process of applying to go back.
Which year was it, Shirley?
1979.
1970.
And I'd had 10 years of yoga by that time, or 9 years with Swami Radha. So I did know quite a bit about the philosophy. That wasn't a surprise to me, the philosophy. And I'd done a lot of yoga asana, but I had never done asana the way we did in that class.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd never held things as long as we held them in that class. And I had been shouted at. We were shouted at a lot in those days. And as I say, my schooling, I'd been shouted at a lot. So that didn't shock me. I didn't fall apart. Some people did. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important to, you know, to get the wisdom and not to be disturbed by different approaches of teaching.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our mind is so chattery, like, you know, we call it monkey mind. Like, unless it is like it's something unusual, like, you know, it's not the traditional way of teaching, then we pay attention, right? Then we are like, we wake up and we start paying attention, right? Yes, I experienced that by traveling in the world and seeing different approach to teaching and learning. And I would like to hear more about. You've mentioned something when we were communicating before that about Guruji's visit to Canada, to North America. So could you
Yeah.
talk more about that?
Well, in 1984, I think it was, and I'd been to India then about maybe 4 times, 5 times. I'm not sure, but he came to do a convention in San Francisco in 1984, and they invited 3 Canadian teachers to teach there because it was an international convention. And he was going to go around and see teachers for the first time. So I was one of 3 teachers. Maureen Carruthers from Vancouver was one of them, and Liz McLeod from Edmonton, who died some years ago. We were the teachers, the 3 Canadian teachers who taught there. And my husband was part of a medical panel, the medical panel that, again, Bruce Carruthers from Vancouver, Derek, my husband, and an American doctor, Mary Schatz, who's written a book on back care, and Dr. Karindikar from Pune, who was traveling with Guruji, with the 4 doctors on the panel. So we went to that convention, and I learned that Guruji was traveling afterwards a little bit in North America and was coming to Vancouver. And so I asked if he'd come to Victoria. And he came to 3 Canadian cities. He didn't have a lot of time here, but he came to Vancouver, then up to Victoria, and then went to Edmonton, where Liz McLeod lived. And so here he came. He wanted to see teachers teach. He said, I won't teach in Canada. I just want to see your teachers teach.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time for the teachers to have him see their teaching.
And what was I would wonder, like, what was remarkable, because I only had chance to watch B.K.S. Iyengar's teaching on YouTube, but what kind of person he was, you know, in everyday life?
He was a very easy guest. He was very, very easy to have as a guest, you know, quite different. of course, he had his own room, and I was told that he liked to practice sometimes he got up in the night and practiced, or he woke up very early. And so he liked to have a coffee maker in his room. So I arranged that. I got the coffee maker and everything. And he likes sugary, creamy coffee. So, all of those things, put them in the bedroom. And so he had them. And he did get up and practice in the night because his bedroom was next to ours. And we heard some noise. But his bedroom was above. My mother-in-law, my husband's mother, lived with us then. And his bedroom was above her bedroom. And in the morning, she came up to me and she said, "Whatever was going on last night?" So she said, all night, she said, "I kept hearing thump, thump, thump." So I didn't know then, but I thought about it. And I thought, I think he was doing dropovers from headstand.
Yeah.
I think he was doing something like that was repetitive, because he used to do that for practice quite often, and especially when you're traveling, you have to regroup and center yourself. So and the dinners with him, I mean, they were very simple dinners. I didn't cook Indian food. I do cook Indian food now, and I like Indian food, but I wasn't skilled enough. If I'd known better, I'd have had a cook come to cook for him. But my mother-in-law helped me, and I was told he liked milky desserts, sweet milky desserts, but I don't like hot milk at all, so I never make them. But my mother-in-law made him an English rice pudding, and he loved it, And I made bread. I couldn't make Indian bread, but I was making bread at the time, so I made homemade bread, and we had simple meal. And again, I was told no salads. He doesn't like salad. So I cooked some things for him. We had, family dinner with us around the dinner table, and lots of conversation. And he would be looking out at the view again, because and making some comment about that, and then suddenly his mind would be triggered by some thought about yoga, and he'd start teaching yoga, or speaking about it, philosophy, the skin, or something like that. And so it was absolutely fascinating. And we enjoyed it. We were sorry when it ended. And I did leave with him, actually, to go to Edmonton. I flew on the plane with him to Edmonton. Liz McLeod, who was there, was a friend of mine. And she was hosting him, and I stayed there too. And she found the same. He was a very easy guest. Very easy. And fun, lots of laughter.
Fantastic to hear that story. I just feel the warmth and in my heart, like I've been there with you. Shirley, so let me ask you the one maybe final questions, so to not to keep you too long here online. Why have you decided, like, when was it the moment when you decided, yes, I want to become and to dedicate my life to be a yoga teacher?
I don't know that there was one moment. I think it evolved because I started teaching at the Y. My first teacher gave a 10-week course, and they needed teachers. There was such an interest in yoga at that time and nobody to teach it. And the two teachers in Victoria were both English people who'd lived in India, so they had a background. And so we needed teachers, and she said to a few of the students, if you're interested in teaching, I'm going to do this 10-week course. So I wasn't really interested in teaching, but I was interested in learning about yoga. So I did the course, and a colleague of mine, Carol Miller, who's also still in Victoria and still teaching, was part of this too. And we did it, and then we started teaching. And I really, truly felt at that point I was perhaps 1 week ahead of the students with my teaching. I didn't know much at all, and I knew I didn't know much. And that's when Swami Radha appeared. And I felt, I want to learn more from her. I want to learn about this philosophy of yoga. So I went to her ashram, and that's how it evolved. And again, at that time, I hadn't thought of teaching. I had stopped work to bring up a family and to help my husband, but I was thinking of going back to possibly teaching. I had trained to teach in England, but I didn't teach there. I didn't want to teach, and or go back. I'd worked in advertising, my last work, and I'd also worked in television writing, and I thought there was nothing in Victoria like that. There was no possibility of doing the work I'd been doing in London. So I thought, well, perhaps I will teach, but I didn't really want to do that either, teach school, I wasn't. So then I thought I would go and take French studies at university because I'd like to speak. I like French. I love France and I like French. And I thought, well, I'd like to become fluent in French. And so I had been to the university and been finding out about things like that and was about to register there. And yoga just started to take up more and more of my time. I was reading about it, I was practicing, I was teaching. So it wasn't a light on the road to Damascus or anything. It was just something that evolved.
Yeah, just happened naturally.
Yeah.
Wow. It's a fascinating story. I'm really impressed, and I'm just full of emotions and feelings. I'm like I was on the journey with you. Shirley, as I said, I wanted to have these dialogues as this dialogue, and hopefully that the audience that is listening to us will have some questions, and we will meet again and maybe again
Yes.
to ask questions from.
I hope there are questions. Yes. Yeah.
And I will ask very last question. If you would be asked to give only one advice to the audience who would listen to us, what would you say?
That's easy. Practice. That's personal practice. Personal practice is a little bit neglected, I think. People and they want to be in classes. They want to be on Zoom classes now. They want to do timed practices, and those are all worthwhile. I mean, you have to learn a subject first before you can do much with it. So it's important. You have to learn, you have to study, you have to practice. But to set up a personal practice, because it's tailored just to you. It's not for anybody else. When I practice, I mentioned earlier that I sometimes separate pranayama. For years, I separated pranayama and asana practice. But because of my husband at the moment, I can't always do that. So but I know from my body what it needs in the morning. Do I need, like this morning before coming on to you, I'm not at ease with the television thing. I'm at ease of talking, and I like the telephone to talk on, and I write about it all the time. But I thought I need to breathe, and I got up and I was feeling rushed this morning. If I was going to do this interview, I'd have said 11 o'clock or 11:30. I'd be more ready then than 9:30. But Rachel, it suited my daughter. So we have two separate houses here that we live on, but I saw her and I was rushing around, and she said to me, go and do your pranayama and then we'll work this out, so I did. And so, I did that. So I'll do some asanas later on today. But some days, a lot of days now, because of my age, because I do what I call my infrastructure practice, for joints. I mean, I can still do Padmasana, but my knees sometimes, not in Padmasana, my knees never hurt in Padmasana, but I have 3 stories in my house, so I go up and down stairs a lot. So I want to keep my knees moving. I want to go for walks and be healthy. And so I need my legs and arms and back, and I have to lift more things now than I used to. So there is a lot of time now that I spend on those things, you know, and feet. Just when you get old, your skin gets thinner, and so the soles of your feet apart, the skin there, you have to keep that as supple as you can, because I do have some problems in my feet, but I do some special things for my feet, you know, just for me every day in the mornings. And I've started using ropes again for strength. And I was a little fearful because I have a pelvic swing, one that hangs from the ceiling, a free hanging pelvic swing, and to hang in. And Guruji showed me how to do it with them and relax, because I have high blood pressure too, so I have to be careful. So, you know, with my head supported and things like that. So I used to do that very, very often, but I felt a little nervous going in the ropes and hanging upside down on my own, because I'm alone in this yoga room mostly. And because you can, if you come out too quickly, get dizzy. So you have, so I've got my yoga room is in a basement. It's on it's a carpet there, but it's on a concrete floor. It's not like a nice bouncy floor. So I felt I couldn't hang in the ropes, but I started using the ropes for other things to get some more strength and upper body strength, particularly. And they were hurting my hands a little bit. So I suddenly remembered a teacher I'd seen years and years ago in England who wore gloves when she used the ropes, leather gloves. And I thought, I have a drawer full of leather gloves that I hardly ever wear now. You know, really nice leather, thin leather, you know, it's like you pull on and it's nice, soft.
Yeah.
And so I went into my drawer and I rummaged through all my gloves and found this pair of Italian leather gloves, beautiful leather, you know, and that I have worn for decades. And I took them down, put them on, took them downstairs and tried the ropes. Marvelous. They're marvelous because you can feel the sensitivity is still there. Not as much as bare skin, but and I can go in the ropes. So I feel very confident now hanging upside down. So I do that every day.
Wow.
As part of my infrastructure series. And then weightlifting. Another challenge of being old is you can't build muscles easily.
Mm-hmm.
I was quite muscular when I was young, but now I'm very skinny and I'd like to have more flesh and more muscle, but it's slow. But it's fun building it.
Yeah. I think we do take, you know, we take our health sometimes as granted, right? And
Yes.
our body capabilities, capacities granted. And it's amazing, like, you know, the way how the challenges that you face, you find the way to face them and to walk around them and to still to practice. And yeah, thank you for advice. It really resonated with me because yeah, we can read tons of books about benefits and advantages of
Yeah.
yoga, but as Guruji said, just open your mat and practice, right? This is
That's right.
the best gift that you can give to yourself, and with the time you will your body will tell you big thank you.
It will. I mean, I one piece of advice I try and follow all the time. It's from a Swami called Vivekananda. Have you heard of him, Vivekananda? And he's dead now, but he was very well known in the 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, discard everything that weakens you, have nothing to do with it. And I thought that's perfect. And I see even this morning, because I felt a little more rushed because this was going to happen, I found myself rushing around a bit. And again, my mind now says, like a mantra, discard everything that weakens you. It weakens you. People have falls when they're old because they're rushing. I've had a couple of falls. I broke my knee at one point, my kneecap, and because I was rushing. And so it weakens you. These things weaken you. So slowing down. And so that's one of my mantras. I have many mantras.
Especially in these days when the life pace of living is just speeding up so crazily, sometimes it's important to slow down and to catch up with yourself.
Yeah.
Really, I just don't want you to hold you anymore. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your story. And I feel like I know you a little bit more, and I hope that it's the beginning of our maybe regular calls. And yeah, so thank you so much
Well, I think I'll get the Zoom masters. I'll get it on my iPad or my lap. I've got a laptop computer as well. Then I can move to a place with a better background.
That's totally fine. So please, guys, and please, dear friends, subscribe to our channel and let's start a dialogue. Write down, as I said, comments below, and we will come back to you with answers to these questions. And I will hope to connect with Shirley later on. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Shirley.
Thank you. Thank you.